Namaste. Welcome to the 11th episode of our series titled Sthitaprajna under the Truth as Authority uh, chain of lectures or chain of satsang, as we call it in Sanskrit. Any gathering of people where divinity and spirituality is discussed has been called in India since a long time satsang. Satsang means sat means truth, sang means gathering. A gathering where truth is the main topic of discussion. The truth is being re-established as to its true pristine origins. Last time, in the last episode, we concluded saying that observances must have a place in someone's life if the points we learned are to be established and practiced in a man's spiritual life. So, it is only important that we discussed this time or today in this episode the various aspects of uh, Gita which discusses the observances. First is selflessness. Selflessness means the absence of ego, absence of a dominating ego. Ego has two meanings in spirituality. Ego is the in Sanskrit it is called ahankara. Ahankara as ego can have two meanings. One is the negative meaning of ego when it is used for displaying characteristics of dominance of a criminal nature, a dominance that hurts others. But here, in our context, it can mean both. Selflessness is the height of or the midway in the journey of Sthitaprajna. Prajna registers a reasonably high altitude when the self goes into the background, and the self of the higher kind. The lower kind is the egoistic kind, and the higher kind is uh, the sheer pristine identity which makes you or I as the essential I that was there even before I was born physically. Before my birthing took place, consciousness as part of a cosmic whole existed. We discuss and we try to understand, we try to establish that over the course of the series of episodes. And here, selflessness means try to remove both the selves from the activity or any endeavor we do. And then second one is the removal of lust and loath, Loath. Lust means the infatuation, the promiscuous infatuation that A develops towards B. It could be between people, it could be between man and food, it could be between man and nature. Anything that is unnatural, classified unnatural, becomes lust, infatuation, over obsession, and loath. We found out in the previous episode, in the episode before the one, that loath is a result of infatuation. If the person who is lustful fails to acquire his object of lust, his target of lust, he develops loath, krodham, or anger, sheer anger, pointless anger, costless anger. So that we have to try to remove in our daily lives. The third is the deploying of the above two. Whatever we learned and we try to introduce as positive factors in our life, we have to deploy them. Otherwise, it becomes an academic construct, or it becomes what we nowadays call a mental construct only. without benefit to yourself or to others. So the third one is to deploy that equilibrium we gained in the journey towards Sthitaprajna. Equilibrium or equipoise is the typical meaning of the word Sthitaprajna, or established prajna, established consciousness, or identifying the consciousness, our individual consciousness, with the universal cosmic consciousness. That is uh, the 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 fourth factor that we have to identify. The next one is the cultivation of the purity of intellect. We found out that prajna essentially means the domain of the intellect, a step higher than buddhi, as we know. We said body, mind, manas. Body means sharira, mind means manas, buddhi means intellect. That intellect, unless a purity is maintained throughout your spiritual life or your spiritual existence in a day, it is of no use. All the previous aspects that we mentioned earlier becomes useless. All the four aspects we discussed earlier becomes useless unless it is added with purity. That means again ego comes in, the negative ego. All the other factors, if they are mixed with the negative ego, it develops what is called an ownership and an authorship. The idea of some people who are pandits or professors, they develop a conceit, as we call in academic language. That is called I did it, I developed it, I authored that poetry, I authored that book, I am the author, I am the owner of all that I discussed. That should go. Or in English, simple English, in idiotic English, idiomatic English, I'm sorry, idiomatic English, we say ego must go. The ego of authority, ego of authorship, the ego of ownership should go. Only then its place can be taken up by purity. Purity is what? The pristine state. Imagine a lake or a bowl of water or a pan of water, a saucepan of water, which is absolutely pure, without any dissolved solids or any turbidity or anything that makes it impure, or pure milk, you could imagine, because pure milk is considered in Vedic literature and in Vedic thought, in Vedanta, as one of the purest substances. Even there is a concept called Paramahamsa. Paramahamsa, Hamsa means Parama means the ultimate variety, ultimate species of swans. Hamsa means a swan. It is said, it's not yet proved, it is said that a swan can separate water from milk, or swan can separate impurity from purity. So that must be the aim of the phrase purity of intellect. Once purity of intellect is achieved, you could say that you could go to the next step, because we know we are all basing our discussion on the Bhagavad Gita, and we discussed, and I think I convinced you, at least partly, that to study the Gita you do not require even a physical guru, because there are plenty of Gita editions available. I mentioned two, especially the one published by Chinmaya Mission, who who was authored by Swargiya late Srimanandaji. Another book in Malayalam called with the introductory portion called Sadhana Bodhini by the late Swargiya Prakashananda Swamiji. So these are the two books I use, but again, the authors are not the important people. The subject matter is the most important one. And what is in the subject matter? Dialogue between two. And who is the dominant factor in the dialogue? Krishna. Krishna should evolve in our study, in our life, as our guru. There is no need for an intermediary or a intermediate person, which is again basically a Western Semitic concept. You do not require an intermediary between you and God. Here we consider God as Krishna. Although God is supposedly having no akar or form, in order to make our study and our devotion more poetic and more personal, we attribute a form to this concept, and that is what we have here called Krishna. And stay close to that. This point, the sixth point, is that we have to stay close to our object of learning, or our hero of learning, or simply our hero, which is in this case Krishna, and the book called Bhagavad Gita. Remember or establish this fact in your mind, that the Gita contains all the guideposts that you require for a steadfast life, for a life governed by dharma. All your karma should be governed by dharma. All your karma should be garnished with an icing called dharma. Then your life becomes more and more fruitful, more and more joyful, and more free, which is the ultimate goal of life. The seventh one, the whatever we learn or whatever we mentioned, the sixth aspect that we mentioned before, we should commit ourselves to practice them, to observe them, to observe these points, these factors in our life, in order to make our life today better than yesterday and tomorrow better than today. Simple. Generally, as we grow older, it is said in English, there is a common phrase in English, after 50 or 55, the mind takes over matter. The mind has more governance of your body. It is just the opposite case in your young age, where body has control over mind. Whatever happens in the body, which is fed by the senses around, the processing takes place inside, and then the body controls, the body dictates or commands the mind what to do next. In any activity you could analyze. Even as a young man, you could predict what I just mentioned above a little earlier, that mind takes over matter by the time you turn 50 or 60. Because by the time, body slowly begins to decline its growth. Body begins to fall. And then another phrase which is common in English, the flesh falls. Okay, the body falls, but the mind soars above. The mind has more control, or mind should have more control, because we are talking about the domain of the mind. From the mind, we have promoted ourselves to a stage called intellect, in Prajna, in consciousness. Our goal is to reach that superconscious domain where our individual consciousness merges, or is able to merge with the cosmic consciousness, as in the state of Sthitaprajna, or in the ideal state of yoga, of union. Okay, union between two factors, your individual factor and the cosmic factor. Okay, and the next eighth, unless we continually practice, unless we continuously practice whatever we learned in our yesterdays, in our past, we have to make it a part of our sadhana, a word that you will hear very often in Vedic or Vedantic discussions. Unless sadhana is able to reinforce your knowledge, unless the sadhana, along with humility, along with egolessness, along with selflessness, along with devotion, you are able to conduct your sadhana or practice, whatever, it could be any kind of sadhana, because the sadhana simply means revision. a revision, a daily revision of all the lessons from day one, all the lessons from the basics, all the lessons from the kindergarten to the stage where you are now. That should be practiced. By this time, if you are able to practice all that we discussed, I mean, the first stipulate that I mentioned to you is at least practice not telling lies for 6 months. Imagine that you have passed 1 month into the practice. If you are able to observe all the uh, 8 factors that I just mentioned, you will develop what is called beginnings of self-awareness. Self-awareness is simply a point, a milestone in the long journey or the short journey for the smart people towards the goal of Sthitaprajnatva, the condition of the state of Sthitaprajna in our spiritual journey. The self-awareness comes, or Atma Bodham, or the beginnings of Atma Bodham will begin to sprout in your mind or in your heart, or the mind will begin to establish a connection between the mind itself and the heart. I'm not talking about the cardiac system, physiological or anatomical cardiac system. I'm talking about that part in your body where we always say, when we tell the truth, we hold our hands like this, and that is the heart that I'm talking about. A connect develops between your heart and your mind or your intellect when self-awareness begins to bloom. The 10th aspect that we try to learn today is what is the benefit, you may ask. Okay, I did all this, but then my daily trudges continue to happen. My daily issues, my daily troubles, my daily headaches continue to accompany me all the while. But naturally, you will be surprised to know that if you followed all the factors that we discussed today in this episode, you will find that you are beginning to get relief from grief. There's a beautiful expression in the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, is called Samvidyat Dukkha Samyoga Viyogam. Dukkha Samyogam. Our mind, unfortunately, is always attached with dukkham, sadness, sorrows. Sorrows are waiting at the door to come in without even knocking, without being invited. So, you will have the ability to connect or disconnect or isolate, which means viyoga. You will have the isolation skill to detach yourself from the daily sorrows that you experience in life. With this positive note, let me conclude today's episode. Until we meet next time, namaste.